Imagine meeting two people at the beginning of their careers. The first is Oliver. At just 30 years old, he's already climbing the corporate ladder. Long hours, big responsibilities, an impressive salary that eventually grows to more than £500,000 a year. He drives a luxury car, lives in a beautiful home, travels for business. From the outside, he looks like someone who's won the game. Then there's Ethan. Every morning he wakes up before sunrise, sorts letters, drives the same delivery route through the same neighborhoods. By the end of the year, he'll earn around £45,000. His life is simple. His car isn't new. His house is modest. Nobody would ever mistake him for a millionaire. Now imagine both men work for the next 35 years. One earns millions more than the other over the course of his career. So here's the question. Who do you think retires first? Most people don't hesitate. The CEO. It seems obvious. Higher income should mean greater wealth. Greater wealth should mean greater freedom. But that's not what happened. When retirement finally arrived, Oliver wasn't ready to stop working. His lifestyle depended on the income he'd spent decades building. Ethan, on the other hand, handed in his keys, said goodbye to his colleagues, and walked away without worrying about another paycheck. Not because he had earned more, because he'd quietly built something far more valuable. If you enjoy stories that reveal the psychology behind money and the habits that quietly shape financial freedom, consider subscribing. On this channel, we explore the decisions that matter most, not just for your bank account, but for your future. So how does a mailman retire before CEO? The answer isn't luck. It isn't inheritance. And it isn't some secret investment that only a few people know about. It starts with one simple difference in the way Oliver and Ethan looked at every pound they earned. And over 35 years, that small difference changed everything. Something interesting happened over the next few years. Both Oliver and Ethan became better at earning money. Oliver's promotions came quickly. His salary doubled, then doubled again. Each new role brought bigger bonuses and bigger opportunities. By his 40s, earning £500,000 a year didn't seem impossible anymore. Ethan's income grew too, not by much. A small raise here, a little extra there. Nothing that would ever make headlines. From the outside, it looked like Oliver was pulling further and further ahead. And in terms of income, he absolutely was. But wealth isn't built when money enters your bank account. It's built by what happens next. Every time Oliver received a raise, his lifestyle quietly expanded with it. A larger house because he could afford it, a nicer car because he'd earned it, private schools, luxury holidays, a second property. None of those decisions were reckless. In fact, each one made perfect sense on its own. The problem was that every new expense came with a monthly commitment. And over time, those commitments became permanent. His income kept rising, but so did the amount of money required just to maintain his life. Ethan experienced something very different. Whenever he got a raise, he allowed himself a small reward. Maybe a nicer meal, a weekend away. But once that moment passed, most of the extra money never reached his spending account. It was invested automatically. He increased the amount every single year, even if it was only by a small amount. At first, it barely made a difference. A few £100 invested each month doesn't feel life-changing. That's exactly why most people stop. The results are invisible in the beginning. But while Oliver's raises disappeared into bigger monthly payments, Ethan's raises quietly bought ownership. Ownership of businesses through index funds. Ownership of assets that could grow whether he was working or sleeping. Neither man felt dramatically different after 5 years. That's what makes this lesson so dangerous. Financial decisions rarely change your life overnight. They simply point you in a direction. And after 20 years, those directions no longer look similar. One person owns an expensive lifestyle. The other owns income-producing assets. That's when Oliver began to realize something he'd never been taught. A high salary can make you feel wealthy, but only assets can make you financially free. And once Ethan understood that, he stopped asking one question forever. He no longer wondered, how much can I earn? Instead, he asked, how much of what I earn can keep working long after I'm finished working? About 20 years into their careers, something happened that neither Oliver nor Ethan expected. Their company went through a difficult period. Budgets were cut. Departments were reorganized. Jobs that once felt secure suddenly didn't. For the first time, Oliver asked himself a question that had never crossed his mind. What if my salary stopped tomorrow? It was an uncomfortable thought. Despite earning more than most people ever would, he realized almost all of his lifestyle depended on his next paycheck. The mortgage, the cars, the holidays, the private school fees. If the income disappeared, the lifestyle would begin disappearing with it. Ethan asked himself the same question. His answer was very different. His investments had been growing for over 2 decades. Some of them were paying dividends. Others had simply increased in value over time. He wasn't financially independent yet, but he had something Oliver didn't. Options. That's the hidden benefit of building assets. They don't just grow your net worth. They buy you flexibility, the freedom to change careers, to work fewer hours, to take a break without feeling like everything you've built is about to collapse. Oliver had spent years buying things that made him look successful. Ethan had spent those same years buying pieces of businesses. Every month, his investments quietly owned a little more of companies all over the world. While he worked, his money worked too. And the strange thing was, the gap between them became largest near the end of their careers. Not because Ethan suddenly started earning more, but because compounding finally began doing the heavy lifting. The first 10 years had felt slow. The next 10 felt encouraging. Then the final decade changed everything. That's how compounding works. Most of the growth comes near the end, not the beginning, which is exactly why so many people quit too early. They stop just before the snowball becomes large enough to roll on its own. Looking at Ethan's investment account, Oliver finally understood what he'd missed all those years. A financial freedom isn't created by one extraordinary salary. It's created when your assets eventually earn enough that your paycheck is no longer the only thing supporting your life. And that realization changed the way Oliver saw success forever. 35 years passed. Oliver had earned millions of pounds throughout his career. His office overlooked the city, people respected him. His success was obvious to everyone around him. Ethan's career had been much quieter. He delivered letters through rain, snow, and early mornings. Most people never gave his job a second thought. Then retirement arrived. Oliver sat down with his financial advisor, expecting to hear one sentence: "You've made enough." Instead, he heard something very different. "If you want to keep your current lifestyle, you'll probably need to work a few more years." It wasn't because he'd failed. It was because his life had become expensive to maintain. His income had always been impressive, but his freedom depended on continuing to earn it. A few weeks later, Ethan retired. Not with a private jet, not with a mansion, but with something Oliver had spent decades chasing: choice. He could spend more time with his grandchildren, travel when he wanted, volunteer, read, wake up without an alarm clock. His investments couldn't buy everything, but they had bought him time. And in the end, that's what financial freedom really is: the ability to choose how you spend your days. Looking back, the biggest difference between Oliver and Ethan wasn't intelligence. It wasn't ambition. It wasn't even income. It was understanding that every pound has 2 jobs. You can spend it to improve today, or you can invest it to improve tomorrow. Neither choice is always right. Life is meant to be enjoyed. But Ethan never allowed today's comforts to completely replace tomorrow's opportunities. That's why year after year, he quietly purchased more freedom, while Oliver quietly purchased a more expensive lifestyle. The surprising part is that nobody noticed it happening. For decades, Oliver looked like the wealthy one. Ethan looked ordinary. Only at the finish line did the difference become obvious. Because wealth is rarely about what people see. It's about what they don't. The investments quietly compounding in the background. The lifestyle upgrades you decided not to make. The raises you invested instead of spent. Those decisions rarely feel important in the moment. But over 35 years, they can completely change where your life ends up. So if there's one lesson this story leaves us with, it's this. Don't judge your financial future by the size of your salary. Judge it by how much of that salary is quietly building a life where work becomes a choice instead of a necessity. Because in the end, the richest person isn't always the one who earned the most. It's the one who gained the freedom to stop working first.